Hello, everybody, and welcome to another My Music. Today, I'm going to be speaking to the wonderful David from the Royal Ritual. Thanks for joining me, David. Nice clock, by the way. Lovely clock.
Thank you. It's a shame it doesn't work. That's not the time.
It's not the time, but I'll tell you what it's time for. It's time for this.
Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop.
Oh, there you go. So, how are you doing, sir? Where are you coming from?
Right now, I'm at my home in North Yorkshire.
Lovely. Oh, very nice. Have you ever
all
met
right.
a Yorkshire vet?
I've never met the Yorkshire vet. No,
No.
I'm sad to say. I'm not.
We have to make.
I say I've not been back in Yorkshire long. The truth is it's been a few years, but because of the pandemic, it still feels like I've only just really arrived back in the UK.
Right. There you go. Where were you prior to that?
California for quite a long time.
California.
Oh yeah,
It's a lovely part of the world. Lovely part of
it
the
is.
world.
Yeah, Northern California is absolutely gorgeous, and I was that sort of in between Sacramento and Tahoe. It was a wonderful place.
And so you've come back to English weather.
Although saying that, today's absolutely gorgeous. It's stunning up here.
It's a lovely balmy day today. It's absolutely wonderful, but it's very unusual. Yesterday we had so much rain. In 20 minutes, it completely flooded surrounding areas. It took me an hour to get to school.
Gosh,
that's what English weather can do for you.
Yeah, if you don't like the weather in England, wait 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Music. So, has it always been in your blood? Have you always liked creating music from a young age, or is this a fairly an adult thing for you?
Well, I'm definitely the black sheep in the family, since there's no kind of genetic predisposition to music, but it's certainly been all that I've really thought about since I can remember. Really, I started properly studying when I was around 7, and then from there it just kept on going and going and going. Yeah,
did that actually cause you? Did that actually cause you some rifts in the family? Because I mean, I like you grew up in a family where music really wasn't liked even, and actually, I used to come home with my music that I'd made and whatever, and they all sat there and went, right, can you turn that noise off, please? And then carried on. I don't know whether you got that or
no, not at all. I had a very supportive background from my parents. I had a very medical background, and I had lots of medical issues as a child, and I felt very kind of not safe is not the word with music, but it was very much it was something that focused me in on a thing that was really rewarding to me as a child, and it made me ignore a lot of other stuff that was going on. And I think that possibly has a lot to do with my parents kind of seeing that in me and kind of pushing me towards it. So actually, when I wasn't practicing piano, they would push me to practice piano, and it was my dad who introduced me to so many wonderful artists that are now sort of my foundational influential artists. So no, it was very supportive like that growing up. Almost too supportive, because I wasn't prepared for just how difficult a career in arts in sonic arts is. So so that's where I am now as an adult. But hey,
so you almost grew up thinking, actually, this is actually something that's that normal people do, and then realize that actually normal people get a job with prospects and money.
Possibly yes and no. That's a difficult one, because of my medical issues as a child, I definitely felt like I wasn't like other people. I actually, when I was as a kid, I thought I was an alien. I thought I was not like other people because I was singled out so much. So no, I never thought it was what normal people did. But then again, I didn't really think that anyone. Well, and even then, I didn't think that many of the people that actually were my friends were particularly normal either. So I had this notion that what's considered normal is actually a lie, and there are no normal people. There are situations that people find themselves in, and I was quite young when I kind of realized that, or I came to that conclusion, and I just felt like, really, this is what I like doing, so I know I want to do that. And I knew from a very, very young age that I couldn't do anything else moving forward. That's all I want.
That's really interesting. So were you quite drawn to musicians then at a young age who were alien-like in the nature of the fact that they were, you know, like Bowie, for example, who
very good example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had this kind of it away from mankind in a way. He was kind of almost like a voyeur that could look at our normal human behavior and see it in a different light.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of a slightly kind of like guilty pleasure, embarrassing story behind or to an answer to that, I should say. But also on the Bowie type thing, I was very young when I discovered Tool. I remember seeing the video for Sober at very, very young age and thinking, I like this. This is doing things to me, and I don't know what it's doing, but I like it a lot. But no, I remember even earlier than that, because I never felt I was cool. I was never cool. I was odd and didn't fit in. And I remember seeing Bryan Adams on TV performing live, and he's not cool. He wore like lumberjack shirts on stage and played this Stratocaster, but there he was, this uncool person just commanding the 20,000 people and just having control of the situation, and that reciprocal kind of that just love in the room basically, or in the stadium. And I just thought, wow, music is such a communicator, because even then I could see he's not cool, but he's doing something amazing. So you don't have to be cool to do this. You just have to believe and be passionate about what you're doing. And then when I saw Tool and then bands like that, Nine Inch Nails and what have you, at a very young age, I was like, okay, I get it now. About being passionate about something and then people follow. Because it's not very easy to watch a Tool video. It's not very easy to listen to some of Nine Inch Nails lyrics. But you get the passion, you get the sense that these artists are actually saying something to you or sharing something with you, be it just a joyous, partiful message, or something that's like deeply ingrained kind of emotional expression. And that's where it's at, is the intent behind how you present your passions.
Interesting. So once you started along that line as a listener, etc., did you then go, were you interested in then going, right, where did this come from, and actually going even further away from easy to find out how unsafe your ears could be, if you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Well, I think once you start listening to people like Nine Inch Nails and Tool and whatever, then the next road down is like, well, I'm going to buy a Revolting Cocks album, or I'm gonna, do you know what I mean? And then you go down, yeah, exactly. And then you go down that line of like, how much noise can I?
Well, interestingly, the Royal Ritual started with a chap called Dustin, who at the time, well, I say at the time, he was until the very end the production manager for Skinny Puppy, and is the keyboardist for Ogre's solo project, Ogre. So yeah, I'd gone quite far down. I'd got to that level of kind of like legacy heritage American North American industrial music. They're Canadian, aren't they? Yeah, no, it didn't take long for me to get there, but really, I've told this story before. When I was 9 years old, my dad had a colleague at his work who had a family member that worked at EMI, or it was someone that worked at EMI, and they managed to get a copy of Division Bell by Pink Floyd about a month or two in advance of it being released. And my dad had the copy, and he said, "Right, my boy, we're going to sit down and we're going to listen to this album from start to finish." And High Hopes, the final piece, is just this huge, I mean, I'm sure you know the piece, this huge orchestral swell at the end, and the lap steel, the pedals, lap steel, I should say, solo at the end. It's just gorgeous. It's huge. But at 9 years old, I mean, I was just blown away. We were listening on these gorgeous Richard Allen speakers from the 70s, I believe, and this Ferguson separate system. It was still, it's in my childhood home. I spotted it when I visited a couple of months ago, and I know it's still
when
there.
Stereos were stereos.
Well, I still have that kind of stuff. I still have my setup here, but I remember at 9 years old just walking over and pressing eject on the CD tray and just looking at the silver side of the disc, thinking, how did that get onto there? And so I became really interested at that age. So 2 years into my kind of like training, if you were, like classical piano lessons, and then starting to pick up other instruments. At that point, I thought, there's technology here. How did that get onto there? And it was at that age that I started thinking about music technology, which is probably what led me towards synthetic stuff, music technology in music production, rather than it being a means to just recording things. And so I think that's what opened me up to so many different elements, you know. I remember going to university.
Did you used to kind of like flip between like music papers at the time? Because there was such a, I kind of remember myself like always struggling to know what kind of music paper to pick up next, because there were from time to time there'd be someone really edgy that you wanted to hear about in Kerrang. There would be something coming through that was quite interesting as a movement or something in Melody Maker, but then there was amazing stuff in things like electronic sounds and things like that, you know, and it would, you know, be articles on how someone had dropped a watermelon from the top of a building and recorded it on a little thing and then sampled it, and you just didn't know, in a way you just didn't know.
You didn't know where to turn, did you?
Yeah, no. Do you know what I mean by that?
I do, but oddly, I never really read that many music magazines. I had a couple of music magazines, but I was very lucky to have a group of misfit friends at school that were all just we were all switched on in various ways without the magazines. And this is pre kind of YouTube and stuff. It didn't even exist then.
So you just talked to each other.
We talked to each other, and a lot of my friends' parents were kind of cool, and they would take them to Glastonbury and things like that. So they would come back after having seen artists, and then would go and buy, well, CDs at the time, I guess, mainly. And that's how we kind of did it. I remember as well, I would go around to my friend because he got Sky quite early on. And I remember we would sit up late watching 120 minutes and things like that on MTV2, and then my parents got Sky, and I've always been a night owl. I mean, this is pretty early in the day for me. Not that early, but and I remember discovering Uncle and Aphex Twin and Square Pusher and all of these sort of seminal electronic artists, and thinking, what the hell is going on here? I want to know more. And so I didn't really I didn't really read what people were writing about them, or, you know, I didn't want to know about that. I wanted to decide for myself what was going on. So I would go out and buy these albums, and it was kind of like I was discovering them I was the one that was uncovering them, because I didn't have anyone else's input telling me to listen to them, or, you know, I just had a little snippet, and then it was almost like I was listening to these albums for the first time. No one else had heard them, so I could make my own decisions about them, and that's partly because I wasn't reading reviews. I didn't know whether this was good or bad in the eyes of so-and-so reviewer. It was just, do I like it? And that's kind of how I've carried it on through, I think. So that if you looked at my record shelves and my CD shelves, it wouldn't make much sense, I don't think.
It won't make sense, or would it make sense in terms of is there a prevailing sort of attitude that's there, or you know, maybe it doesn't make sense in terms of genre or you know, artist per se or whatever, but is there something that you look for in an artist that kind of draws you towards them?
Well, I'm quite anal in that everything's alphabetically arranged, so that's the one thing that makes sense about my not by genre, by artist. I don't split it into genre as well, but it's by artist. I think the main thing is because I'll have, like, I've got Hotel Neon next to Incubus, and I like them both. I do like Incubus, not after Crow After the Murder, but you see what I mean? So it invites questions. There's a story behind why I have listened. I own these records, have listened to these records, and have enjoyed them. And there are some records on there that I bought that I don't actually like, but I thought I would get them. Maybe I'd heard one or two pieces and thought I'd get it. But I still keep the record there because I will put it on to check whether I still don't like it, because sometimes that changes, doesn't it? Yeah, I guess that's the running theme through it. But there's nothing that I look for in an artist other than something that makes me go, I don't understand how that happened. What are they trying to communicate to me? I want to know more. If it's something that's just, that's easy. I get what you're talking about. I don't feel like I'm struggling to learn a new facet of this language, you know.
So you might like, it might be okay, and you might go, well, it's a nice song, but it's not pushing any buttons to make you go, well, actually, I mean, I remember the very first one of these that I did. I had a guy that I've had on recently this week. He's been on more times than anyone else, which was Fred Bong. And I mentioned to him when I was about 11, I won it actually, a Pierre Ubu album, which was, you know, for that age, was a ridiculous album to get.
Yeah.
You know, it should have been Kylie or something. I took this album home. It was that and a Flying Lizards 7-inch as well. And I took this album home, which is called The New Picnic Time, and I played it. And the first time I played it, I just could not make sense. I couldn't make sense of it. But there was something about it that just kept me drawing me back to it and drawing me back to it and drawing me back to it, even though I was thinking, like, the vocal here sounds like noise initially, and apologies, by the way, if you're listening, and the guitar's kind of, you know, discordant and screeching and whatever else, but there was just something so different about it that I wanted to understand it. Are you that kind of listener? Are you with music? Are you the kind of listener that really just wants to pursue until you understand? Or
yeah, I guess so. I have a similar story. I remember getting Drux by Aphex Twin, the double album, and it's almost split 50-50 prepared piano and then meta-synthy electronica stuff. I don't know whether you have listened to the album through or no. So it's a wonderful album, and some of it's really pleasant to listen to. I mean, objectively just gorgeous. That opening piece is just and then you go into the most just dissonant, noisy, percussive dins. It's just objectively awful to listen to, but that's what's so engaging. And I remember listening to it, and I'd studied music production from a bachelor's and master's. We went into, and focusing on studio-based composition, we went into a lot of 20th century avant-garde composers. And of course, John Cage is whether he invented prepared piano, he certainly pioneered it. it 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 meant that I had to. There were circumstantial meanings behind the reason that the album flowed in the way it did, because it's not one CD of prepared piano and one CD of Aphex Twin-esque electronica. It's all just interspersed throughout, and it ends just as beautifully as it began on the piano, but it's not prepared piano. So I think partially because musicology, or modern musicology as a subject, was part of how I studied music production. I think that's kind of ingrained into me when I'm listening to stuff. It's like, if this doesn't make sense now, there must be a historical reason as to why this is here. There must be some link. And then I often kind of go down the rabbit hole and look for it. And that's probably why I prefer owning records and CDs and what have you than streaming, because once you've streamed, it's gone. But when you have something there, you can play it again and again and again, and it's constantly reminding you, because you don't, once it's gone off your screen, it's gone, unless the algorithm brings it back. But it's there. I'll have the record out. I'll put it on top of my piano here, and that's the one I was listening to last. And I think, right, I'm going to put that on again, and it's more active. And I think, yeah, you're like my good therapist, my musical therapist. I'm kind of realizing how I think about stuff. But yes, I think musicology comes into, or modern musicology comes into, why I am listening the way I'm listening. Yeah.
And then what about how you write then? Does it then transverse over into how you write?
That's a tough one.
Because I'll tell you what you just talked about.
Yeah, give me some more context to that question as to how you came to that question.
Because I'll tell you what. Yeah, I'll tell you what. Effectively, what you were talking about there as well, and why I think actually, for those of us that are prepared to learn to listen, we like that kind of difficult nature to it, because that ultimately, I think that's, if you're then creating albums which are actually about life, that's what life is like. Life is very pleasant 1 minute and then a complete mess.
Yeah.
And it can, and life sits together like that. And actually, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, when you put it like that, it does. That's a very good point. I actually literally just an hour or two before we jumped on here, I had a question come through, or a comment on one of my Patreon posts about, I've been deconstructing the pieces on the debut album for the Royal Ritual, going into the sessions and revisiting them, and actually kind of making sense. It really does tie in with what we're saying. I've been making sense of why I did certain things, as looking objectively at it rather than being in the thick of it at the time. And the question came through from one of the great supporters there, about do I approach it in a similar way to Steve Reich? Because Steve Reich said that about 90% of the stuff ends up on the cutting room floor. And actually, that doesn't quite happen with me. I have these seeds of ideas, okay? And I know very quickly whether there's something of value in that idea. It could be a lyrical idea, it could be a melodic idea, it could be whatever it might be. And I know very quickly whether I should work on that. And then it grows, and I start adding stuff to it. And then it just, if I get to a point where I think, okay, this isn't quite working here, that's when I'll go into my music theory and go, well, I know A and C need to work together, but B needs to be theoretical because these are two different. So I need the theoretical step to get there. However, through that process, some of those things that were once added to it to reinforce it now need to be taken away. And instead of throwing those things away, what I do is I recycle them. So that might become a synth patch. It might become a channel strip setting. It might become the seed for another album, taking the gardening analogy, that's a clipping, So I'm kind of like recycling stuff all of the time. And I think that's why I like writing albums, is because it's a process from start to finish, and it's a series of choices that you're making along the way. That's what you're listening to with music, is a series of choices over time. Whereas with a song, it's just one idea. And I think of there are two types of albums. There's one that's like, think of it like photo books. You go into what used to be Borders or Barnes and Noble or whatever, and you go to the photography section and you pick up a Taschen book. All of the photos are curated from one artist that go from the beginning of their career to the end, or it might be one facet or whatever. That's like your concept albums. Okay. That's what I love to do. The other one is the family photo album, where the photos are jumbled up and you need someone to go, oh, that's when we did this, that's when we did that. It's still valid, but that's like the single song approach, where you might have an album of songs that aren't necessarily connected, but it's an experience of you can press play and stop and, you know, jump from one thing to another, or go onto a Spotify playlist. And that's the other approach. I don't do that. But I don't want it to sound like I'm discrediting it. It's just a completely different approach. Does that kind of answer your question? I go for the concept album.
Yeah. And there's probably the third approach, which is the greatest hits album, even if they're not greatest hits. So where probably people just produce the best song that they can at any given time, and the song just stands on its own as a song, etc. And then they literally, if they're going to put them together, they literally just collect them together and put them on an album. And it's like, well, there's that song, and then there's that song, and then there's that song, and there's that song, and nobody's really even thought about the fact that they're all going to be together in an album. There they are, in the album.
Although that can really work. Interesting you say that. I mean, Björk did that for her greatest hit. She didn't put "Oh So Quiet" on, which was the right decision, even though it is her biggest single, I think. But I'm interestingly, I'm working with an artist in Pennsylvania. There's a band called Trek with Quintronic started in the 70s, and sort of the Trek with Quintronic ceased to exist in the 80s. Chap called Paul Wilcox and David Kane, and then various other musicians were involved. And Paul had been writing other music through the 80s and 90s into the 2000s. And he came to me to revisit a load of the old recordings that were just so, you know, they needed to be repaired. They were really damaged. And so I've been working with him to create a double album of, it's called Stranger Than Today. And it's 40 years worth of music condensed into, I think it's going to be 80 minutes overall. And it is kind of like a greatest hits thing, but at the same time, it's approaching it saying, what's the common thread throughout it? How do we arrange this so that it makes sense and tells a story? And it almost becomes a concept album in its own right, because it's telling a story through snapshots rather than each snapshot being part of a micro story. So this long thread, and I think that's, you're right. The third approach can also be a really valuable tool for taking a listener on a journey through time at warp speed, rather than just a journey through time at a specific for a specific chapter. Yeah,
you're right. By the way, I think the Björk Greatest Hits album works. I think it works because I think actually it's very much a fan album in a way. I think it's very much a kind of how you've grown up with Björk. That's
If you were there from the beginning, it makes sense.
Beginning.
Yeah. She hasn't done one since Vespertine, though, has she? That was the last. Yeah, she hasn't done another one. I think she would struggle because the newest albums are not hit albums. They're definitely exploratory albums. I think it would be difficult to make a compilation.
There's some amazing music, but very there's some of the tracks are just like they are rather meandering, which is, you know, it's fine. Radiohead does it as well, and more power to them. They're really rewarding listens, but you have to listen to them actively. There's no passive listening to them anymore. It's not like listening to Creep by Radiohead, which is, of course, a greatest hit. You can just throw it on and sing along
hopefully you can sing along. It's quite a difficult one to sing actually, but you know what I mean. The more modern Radiohead stuff, like from Moonshaped Pool.
Yeah.
Good luck, you know. Good luck getting that onto a compilation.
No, I'd say possibly the latest Smile stuff. The Smile stuff is possibly slightly more accessible. Again,
Yeah,
you know,
probably. I actually haven't
you
paid
know,
too much attention to that, to be fair, and that's not for any other reason. Then I've just been so obnoxiously busy with. I mean, that's what happens, isn't it? When you get too far into music yourself, you end up, you know, figuring, you know, you start wondering, when do I actually get to listen to the thing that I enjoy doing? When do I actually get to make the thing that I enjoy making? And yeah.
do you know? And do you know what that can be an issue for anybody that's involved in music anywhere.
Yeah, and not just music,
Anywhere.
in graphic arts, in photography, in so much. But once you start to have a career in it, you start having to talk about your career. This is a case in point. I'm talking to you about stuff that's going on, and I'm enjoying talking about it. But whilst you're talking about it, you're not making it. When you don't have to talk about it, you can make it. You can just do it whenever. You know,
yeah,
it's no longer a hobby.
When you do this, for example, you get sent so much music to listen to, because like everybody and their aunt goes, "Oh, could you just listen to this?" And it's like, and actually, I know I've said this before on here. One of my frustrations has always been, and one of my kind of reoccurring nightmares that I kind of wake up in the middle of the night to, is that I die before being able to hear every bit of music that's ever existed, because that to me causes a panic attack. But utterly you can't do it, and the thing is that as you start to get into doing something like this, you suddenly realise that actually you end up having to kind of be selective and go, well, actually, yes, I will. I'll try and listen to that at some point, but you know, ultimately you can't. You just can't. You know, you've just got to.
All we can do is we can just carve our corner. We can just carve our little area where we can, you know, stand up and stand proud and add something of value to the conversation, because that's all it is. That's all art is a conversation at the end of the day in a language that is opaque at best.
Yeah, but I think alongside that, and you probably be the same as me. It's lovely when from time to time you suddenly find space somewhere where you're perhaps doing something, and all of a sudden a bit of music or a bit of art creeps in from somewhere, and it suddenly pricks your attention, and you go, wow, what's that? And I don't know I don't know that we've necessarily got the time for it all the time anymore. It seems like when I was younger there was more time for that, but perhaps there just was. But when it does happen, it's lovely. I think it's great.
It does, and from my perspective, when that happens, that's the point where I go, right, all else stops, because it's inspired me to explore something and make something from scratch. And oddly, that can be. I apologize. The neighbor's dog started barking. I apologize. When that happens, that can literally be the start of an entire album. In fact, that happened with Pleasure Hides Your Needs. I had one idea that I thought about something that had happened, and a piece of art made me. I can't remember what piece of music it was. At the time I was exploring a lot, just listening. But then I thought about a few things that had happened. The music kind of doesn't really matter. I was just in that kind of, I was absorbing. I was a sponge for art at the time. And then I just had this thought about stuff in my past that made me go, I've got a roadmap. I've got a roadmap for an entire album. I know what the album's about. I know how I'm going to start making it. I know some of the techniques that are going to be used throughout it. And so instantly I had a lyrical concept. I had musical elements that would become a consistent concept throughout, a conceptual element, I should say. And I just knew the general direction, and it happened. I won't say quickly, but it happened consistently. I didn't stop once I'd started. So I'm waiting for that for the next album.
There you go. Listen, David, I could talk to you forever, but unfortunately, we are out of time. But it's been wonderful talking to you,
Thank
and
you so much.
I hope what this has done has now inspired people to go and find out a little bit more about your music. Do tell everybody the latest album that you have out there, so that they can go and find that, and then we shall leave everybody to do whatever else it is that they're doing for the rest of the afternoon. But
Hopefully
please do
enjoy
go and check out the music.
Hopefully enjoy some more beautiful weather. Yes, so the new album is called Pleasure Hides Your Needs. It's out on 12-inch vinyl and CD, both with completely different artwork via Analog Trash. It's coming out on Friday, the 24th, so a week today. And there is a listening party on Sunday at 8 o'clock in the evening, our time in England. So 3 p.m. Eastern, midday Pacific, I guess, over on Bandcamp. Hit RSVP on there to get reminders. So that's going to be the whole album in full. And yeah, then shows starting in July, actually. So it's a bit of a quiet time. Then shows starting in July through August.
There you go. You've been told. There's your homework. Go and do it. Okay, folks. Thank you, David. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
On. Folks, hope you've enjoyed that today. If you have, then please do go and share it with other people that love music as much as you do. If you haven't, if you just happened upon this and you just decided to join in and listen to the conversation, you've absolutely hated it, well then sorry, 36 minutes of your life completely wasted. I'm sorry about that. But don't worry, you can get it back. You can go and apply for a form down at the local post office for a driving license, put it in an envelope and send it to someone that you don't know. That will save you 36 minutes back. You'll thank me for it. Until next time, bye for now.